Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bristol Sports Hall of Fame 1970s Sports Reunion. My name is Jack Krampitz, and I am the new president of the Bristol Sports Hall of Fame. I know what you're thinking already, Dave. This place is really going to hell if they elected him as president, but just so you know, I won on the 13th ballot. This was originally going to be the 1940s sports reunion, but Bobby Callett couldn't get any of his high school classmates to get out of the nursing home to get here for the ceremonies. So we decided to go with next year, possibly. We need to put an extra ramp in, and then we'll be good for him and his classmates. I can remember vividly my childhood. I was maybe in third grade, and my father would take me. I was a big Bristol Central fan because I lived on that side of town. My father would take me to watch Bristol Central in the 1970s. When I was in the third grade, I remember watching Swick and Joe DeFilippi play. I was a little kid. And, Swick would give me a ball and say, "Kid, take a shot," and the whole thing. And so this is going to be a highlight for me. And looking at the luminaries in our audience, I'm sure we'll get a lot of audience participation too. Turn it over to Dave Mills now, who will introduce his illustrious panel.
Thanks, Jack. I'm going to sit if you don't mind. I don't know how long I can stand. So Dave, do you want to? No, I don't. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
No one remembers everybody's lives. We kind of did this last year with the 60s group, and we had some people, and I don't know if you saw it on TV, not nothing, but on our website. And lots of people that did see it said it was a great night. Some terrific stories. Gary Palladino emptied out his closet and brought a ton of stuff here, right? Everybody was enamored with Moira the Bureau's uniform in there. I don't know if you've seen it. In the other room, they have Moira the Bureau's high school uniform. If you haven't seen it, make sure you get in there and take a look at it. I think his daughter maybe will fit into it now, but it's amazing. So it's a lot of good stories. We decided to do it again, and it's so difficult to do because there were so many great athletes, so many people involved in the 70s. And the thing that's incredible is how old you are now. It's kind of old to think about. The 70s, everybody's retiring now that was in the 70s, which is amazing to think about. So it's just great to have you around. I was fortunate enough to be able to call some people and ask them to go up and just start the program off, because the whole idea of this program is just to tell some stories. So I'm sure everybody here has got a few stories to tell. There's lots of coaches you can tell stories about, lots of players, lots of teams, lots of things that happen. So it's an opportunity to do that. So I thank the people that came up. Bob Freemuth is my co-host here and the co-chairman of our committee, helped us put the things together. I want to thank Bob Callett and Patty for getting the refreshments. There is beer out there and wine and water. If you want some at any time during the program, just go out and get some, because we're not leaving until it's all gone. So make sure you get out. We'll be good. But Bob Freemuth's here, so I just want to introduce the people. To my left, Pete Losey. Class of what, Pete?
75.
75. Joe DeFilippi.
78.
Ed Swickless.
73.
Frank Kushenko.
75.
Dave.
78.
And Gail.
75.
75, so we got the middle taken care of there. And going through the yearbooks, it's amazing how many people we could have had that come up here. I mean, going back and looking at my team in 1970 with Dennis Schermerhorn's picture in there, and Rick Schmaltz and Louis Miller and Charlie Hudson and Bob Carpenter and some of those guys, Ernie Ginter, Frank Highland. It's amazing how long ago that was. And obviously some of the other players from the other teams. So I don't want to talk anymore. So if these guys aren't funny, and these ladies aren't funny, it's kind of up to you, because you have to laugh no matter what happens. You have to make sure you get them a good laugh, you know. But again, what I've done, there's an order that I tried to put them in. They all wanted to know who's going to be first, etc. So I made out numbers 1 through 6, and they have to draw the number. So whatever they are, they are. And Pete Losey said he wanted to be first, and ironically, the last number that we had was number 1. So
I'm not buying that.
is that true or what?
That's true.
That's true. That's absolutely true.
I wasn't scared.
Sure you were. You were the last one, so.
It came down to you or me.
I would have went.
It was you.
Okay, so what's going to happen is this. We're going to just ask them to tell a couple stories, okay? So when everybody has a chance to do this up here, and if you have anything you want to add to their stories, just go ahead and do that. It's not very formal. If you just want to chirp in or you got something to say that's going to add to it, just feel free to do that. And then once everybody up here has some, we're going to throw it out to you. Because I'm sure all of you have something to say, something you can add that would really make the program even better. So it's just a fun night, is all we're trying to do. No one's going to stand, no one had to wear a shirt and tie or anything like that. We just want to have a good time and just kind of reminisce about some of the great things that happened in the 70s. So without any further ado, I want to introduce a former tackle from Bristol Eastern in 1974. Okay? Pete Wilson.
A quick shout out to my panel there. Joe DeFlippi was the #1 draft pick of the McCabe Waters Tigers when my dad was the coach. Claim to fame. Swick played Little League with me for the Tigers. Claim to fame, 6 for 6. Right?
5 for 5, 4 for 5.
I was a sub, and I was 1 for 3, the only guy in the Tigers did not hit. 29-4, we won that game. Frank, same class as me. He went to St. Paul, but we didn't transfer over. We got a lot of stories. Dave, I don't know you all, so forget it. And Gail is the same class as me. Back at the Boulevard, when we were in grammar school, she was the best athlete then. We were all jealous because she could run faster than the boys. And she's not going to blow her own horn, but when she was at Eastern, she was a great athlete too. And Swick's a Hall of Famer too. A lot of Hall of Famers, not me, but these guys. It's good. Eastern, I'm just going to go over a couple guys that were famous to me. Not famous, but who I remember. Early 70s, to the sports teams, to be honest, were not that good. The soccer team was not good. The wrestling wasn't good. The baseball was average. The basketball was really bad. But one guy I remember, Swick remember, is a guy named Mike Whitcomb. I was a freshman. He was a senior. 3-sport captain, was really good in every sport. I think he might still hold the Eastern scoring record for a single game, I'm not sure. But he was the nicest guy, never said boo, never got on anybody, just a great guy. I don't even know where he is today, he was a good guy. 73 football. All of a sudden there's this big rumor going around town, Frank Sanders is going to come to Eastern. If you guys remember Frankie Sanders, the guy could run 100 and 9 point something. Went to St. Paul, went to Central. All of a sudden, one day he shows up at Eastern. Middle of the season, right, Coach?
You remember?
I remember. I was only a sophomore, but I knew who he was because he played McCabe Waters, blah, blah, blah. First game he scores 4 touchdowns, next game 4 touchdowns, next game 3, next game 2. He had 13 touchdowns in 4 games. And then, unfortunately, before the Turkey Day game, he blew out his knee in practice. And it was never the same. But that guy was a bolt of lightning. Whole gone. Never saw anything like it before or after. I swear I didn't know this guy was going to be here today. I thought he was in California or Las Vegas. Jimmy Bates Jr. is here from the 77, Bristol's all-time, Eastern's all-time leading scorer. 1975, we got a new baseball coach at Eastern, Mikey G. I can't tell you how excited we were at the program. We had Mr. Roy, who was a great guy, but he had some things that he believed in that didn't work out for the team. And the story was that Marty said it was the JV coach, and he called Mike Bedoin to me over, and he said, I just wanted to know, I could have the job, but I wanted a young guy with a lot of energy to get the job, so you guys would have a good coach. So I told that to G, and he's like, yeah, that's not how it happened. And we'll leave it at that, okay? And a couple other things, 2 other players. Again, the 70s to me, there was a lot of average sports teams at Eastern, I hate to say it, except for the 2 years I played football and baseball. But if you remember a kid named Darrell Floyd, his father was Johnny Floyd, track coach. Darrell, he grew up across the street from my grandmother. And every Sunday we'd go to my grandmother's house, around to the road, up Shrub Road, and I would hang out with Darrell for 6, 7 years in a row. Every Sunday we were playing basketball, he was hanging out at his house. And the point I'm getting is he gets a scholarship to BU to go play basketball. Boston University. So I ran into him many years later. I'm like, by the way, we lost touch. I went here, he went there. How was basketball at BU? He goes, he shook his head, he goes, and it didn't really work out. The coach was a real, excuse my language, he goes, the coach was a real asshole. I'm like, who's the coach? He goes, Rick Pitino. Okay, another thing. His career speaks for itself. But anyway, and a couple other stories. 73, 74 football. Back in the day, before cable TV and computers, Muzzy Field was packed. I have the picture in my scrapbook, senior year. Central was undefeated. We were good. There was 8,000 people at Muzzy Field. You couldn't sit anywhere. Bleachers were full. Wall-to-wall people on the sidelines. 7-6 win, big upset. That was a treat. And just off to the side, not really Eastern, but the 74 Legion team, Zone State, we were the first team to win the New England's to go to the World Series. We were stripped of our title. That's another story down the road. But, that's my stories. Those are the people I remember from Bristol Eastern. And obviously, Coach Mills was my football coach. Over there.
That's it, Pete?
That's it.
Before we go to number 2, we want to go to number 1A. I had forgotten. I had asked Bob to have a story ready so we can get the things kicked off. So he's got, I'm calling Bob Freeman there. Start us off.
Re-kick?
Re-kick.
Re-punt? I got my coaching start at St. Stan's Grammar School in 1971. I took over for a legend in Plainville, Ron Jones, and I took over another legend before that at St. Stan, Ben Ruzicki. Stan Orzel was around, and we were members of the parish, and he came up to me one day and said, "We need someone to coach. Can you help us out?" I said, "Yeah, I'll do it." I said, "It looked good on the resume, and, going to college and whatnot." I said, "I'll give it a shot." So I got 2 assistants, Tart Santorso and Johnny Calpetro, to help me out. And one thing, we played 5 innings. We didn't have a place to practice. We ended up practicing behind the church. And then finally, we made arrangements with Bingham Schools. We could practice behind Bingham School, because at that time, they converted the school system to the middle school. So the 8th grade, the Bingham School in the 8th grade, they went to Boulevard. Boulevard had 3 teams. Northeast had a couple teams. So I got involved with this coaching business. And looking at this picture, I look like a Sonny Bono without a mustache. I dug this out, and there's 2 things I remember about the team, the season. Well, before I mentioned the 2 things, what was our record, Frank?
I don't know.
So when you start out going 10-0, you kind of get the bug from coaching, you know what I mean?
Our St. Stan's made you.
Yeah, that's right. But Frank was so good that he could pitch and catch at the same time. I mean, he was a stud. He was a man amongst boys. But the 2 things that stand out about that season was Tart Santorso was coaching third base, and he called for a squeeze bunt with 2 outs. Obviously, that blew up and didn't work, and then he went right into the restaurant business after that. And Johnny Calapetro joined the fire department, so I ended up being by myself. And the other thing that stands out was we were playing at Page Park against the Boulevard team. And they had Marquis Iogas, Rocco Testa, the Hernandez boys. They were stacked, and Mark Newell. So it's how the hell are we going to beat these guys? So Frank's catching, and I think Noon was at the plate, and there's a foul pop, and Frank takes off the mask and flings it. It hits Noon right square in the foul over. He's bleeding all over the place, and he's out of the game. And that's how we probably ended up 10-0. But my challenge tonight, Frank's here, is to see how many of these guys I can name. And there's 15 kids on this team. I think I can name 10, maybe 11. Okay, you got to help me out, Frank. There's a lot of Polskis here, so hang on. Here, ready?
Yeah.
Kaminsky, Shutka, Orza, Rustic, Strahowski, Gene, fireman. Slavsky, Dashinsky, Guarda, Gora, Fish, how the hell did he get in there? Oshenko, Chegovides, and Sonny Bone without a mustache.
Yes, sir.
So who'd I miss? Andrews, Zondo,
I think I got everybody else.
this guy. You can't even remember, for Christ's sake.
What's that?
Well, we did pretty good, 11 out of 14, but,
Look at the back of the picture, maybe you wrote them down.
no, I didn't. I'm sorry, I looked at that.
I followed the rule right down in there.
Yeah, but it was a lot of fun, and from St. Stan's Grammar School, it took off to Plainville High School, and from there.
You're here,
Yeah.
Hall of Fame.
And on the head table. The minutes after that story, the next day, the two Hernandezes, Rocco Testa, were all waiting for me in front of St. Stan's. Across the street, they had to call the police department. Yes.
And all these,
No,
the picture here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 girls behind the picture of Muzzy Field, the dugout there. They were all here for Frank. Coach Maladino, don't you call him Frank?
All right, who's number 2?
I am.
All right, we got Ed Swickles.
Well, before I start, I want to thank the president, Jack Krampitz, for that nice introduction. I do remember the times, giving me the high five and stuff. But I want to tell you what type of guy, what type of coach he was back when we were coaching. This has into the 70s, and I'll get into the 70s in a minute. And we were coaching back in 2000. We were playing New Britain. And Jack's the defensive back. In the first 5 touches from New Britain, they scored without touching the guy. I mean, down the left sideline, 80 yards, down the right side, 70, up the middle. Finally, they ran the quarterback sneak for about 30 yards. They tackled him. I looked at him and said, "Great call, Jack." That's your president, Jack Krampitz.
If it weren't for me, they wouldn't have had that copy.
Well, to get back to the 70s, I graduated in 73, played 3 sports, football, basketball, baseball. Ralph Papazian came in as a new coach when I was a freshman. Freddie Mallon took over when I was a junior. I was with John Reardon, and we were 0-20. We beat our good buddy Billy Guido to snap our 20-game losing streak. We beat St. Paul. Tony Zino hit 3 1-1s near the end, and we upset him for our first win after 20 losses. And then Bill McCooey was the baseball coach. My freshman football coach was Phil Pirog and Tom Bruni. Tom Bruni couldn't say my name, he kept on calling me Smith. So on my helmet was Smith. Phil, I think, just got out of college, and every time we did a line drill, he would put someone's helmet on, he would go one-on-one with some of the players down the hill, screaming at them. Okay. Ralph, the things he used to do he'd be fine. If you made a mistake in the game, you tried to run 20 yards downfield because he'd grab you by the face mask and he'd twist your head and he'd pull you and he said, "If you lose this game, I'm going to kill you." He'd throw you back, or he'd throw a roll of tape at you. I remember we were playing Crosby my junior year, and we're beating them pretty good. And as long as I was at Central, we never had a kicker. No one ever kicked. But the Finelli brothers, Grat, Dickie, and George, convinced Coach Papazian to try for an extra point. Grat's the center, Dickie's the holder, George is the kicker. Here comes the snap. Over Dickie's head is to George. What's George do? He punts the ball. And it goes through the uprights. One ref is like this. Everyone is screaming. Crosby coach is running out. Ralph said, "That's it. We'll never do that." Freddie Mallon, he had a habit of grabbing you by the shirt, pulling you on the sideline and punching you in the stomach. By the end of the game, your shirt was down to here. You couldn't breathe. And I think he was one of the first coaches we used to practice on Sunday. And then Coach McCooey, he was always concerned about foul balls. So, and we were a good team. We could hit the ball, we had some good pitching. Back then we played 9 innings. Most of our high school games were 9 innings. And if we're playing at Central, you know, where they still play now, and if there's a foul ball, it hits the road and it goes down to the tennis courts, Coach McCoy would look on the bench and say, hey, Smookless, why don't you go get that ball? I'd go down, I'd go into school, I'd watch the soccer game, I'd get something to eat, I'd come back 3 innings, here you go, coach. All right, good. You know, even that Muzzy Field, he was more worried about the foul balls going out than coming in.
That's because you only got 5 balls to play with, that's all. Right?
That's it. But we had a lot of good times, a lot of good memories. It was fun. It was a good time. Good job.
Excellent. Who's number 3? That's teacher.
I went to St. Paul's, graduated in 75. The first graduating class for St. Paul's was 1970, so we were a newer school with everything that was happening with sports. The 70s was a very active decade for St. Paul. We had 2 state championships for basketball. We went to the state finals 3 times for baseball. We won 2 of them. It was indoor track, won 6 in a row, from 1971 to 77, I think. Outdoor track won twice. So, I mean, and then we have the distinction of having the fastest human in Bristol from Mr. Dunn, and he still holds the record for Bristol. And the high jump, Jeff Gasky, who just happened to buy a house up the street from me, he holds the record for the high jump at 6'6" and 1/4 inches, which still stands, which I was pretty shocked about that. That's pretty long. I also, coming in at the right time for St. Paul's too. I had the distinction of having great coaches. I had Coach Sinnott for baseball and for freshman basketball. I had Coach Dickow for both JV basketball and baseball. He was very important with both sports, helping out with our teams, with our championships that we won. And Coach Palladino was our varsity coach, he took over for Don Perno, who left to go to UConn. After my freshman year, so my sophomore year, we had a new head coach come in. And we proceeded to go to the semifinals the first year and winning 2 championships right after that. Like I said, the guys that I played with, Mark Noon, Brian Corbin, John Majewski, you know, it was a great team. We had great chemistry. We spent a lot of time together. We worked hard. Our coaches made sure we worked hard. You know, it was a lot of fun. It's always fun when you win, though. It's a fun time. Our freshman team, we went 20-0, and we proceeded to had great success with basketball. I don't really have too many funny stories to talk about, but we were very serious.
Frank.
Oh, I do have. Wait.
Wait, before you go. He's not gonna blow his own horn, but his freshman year, he had the game-winning hit for the state championship.
Frank, who was the track coach that won the championship?
Steve Wysowski.
Steve Wysocki?
Yes. I had the distinction.
Weren't you the assistant freshman basketball coach in the 70s?
I'm sorry?
You were the assistant basketball coach for freshmen in the
In
70s?
the late 70s, yes. Yes.
Who was the head coach?
Mr. Rapone.
Yeah.
He had to get
That was the 0-20 team.
Really? That's one loss
I also have the distinction of being the starting pitcher for Coach Giovinazzo's first varsity game when he was at Eastern. St. Paul's played Eastern in the first game, and I was handed the ball to open up the season, and it was quite a pitching duel. Final score was 17-16. I got into the 3rd inning. I had a 9-0 lead, and it evaporated real quick.
And St. Paul won.
And St. Paul's, we did win, but I did not get the win. Yes.
I'm sure Frank's famous shot is going to come up, and I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about Wolfman. Wolcott never saw anything like Frank Oshenko. We're playing a JV game, and all of a sudden, he rockets the ball out of the field, and it goes on top of the school. And everybody in the whole place went absolutely nuts. They had never seen anything like that.
I do have to add a story onto that. Knowing that there's not a fence and I'm rounding second, heading into third, not knowing where the ball is. A good friend of mine was coaching third, Mr. Casey over there, didn't let me know that I sprinted a whole run.
I want to make sure you were in shape.
He didn't even shake his head, he just said, keep on going. And I got home, what you run so hard for?
They had never seen anything of Wolcott like that.
But that's my stuff.
Can I add to Frank's story here? On that first game with St. Paul, we beat Mike's initial debut, 17-16. But Mr. Losey had a decent day at the plate. He was 3 for 6 with 4 RBIs.
And he also struck out in the game with the bases loaded.
And my biggest memory,
Had to take the good and the bad.
now, I was a freshman. It was Tommy Reynolds and I made the freshman varsity team that year. And I got to play right field as being a catcher my whole life. They threw me out in the outfield. So I'm out in right field. I don't know if you remember right field at Bristol Eastern. It was over near the shop track. It was just mud and dirt and everything else. Pete Losey hits this screamer shot over my head. I mean, I misplayed the ball. I think I was at second base. I think I was at second base before it almost hit the building.
And I still only got a triple, but I was so bad.
But what happened, Frank? You were 0 for 5 there.
Yeah.
I was 2 for 5 with 3 RBIs. That's not bad for a freshman.
Thank you.
Just hold that up for a second. This from the Bristol Press?
Yeah.
Remember the Bristol Press? We used to have a paper in town. And Dave,
Oh, no, I have a whole thing.
but I mean, this is the thing, this is Wayne's first game.
Yeah.
So it's amazing all the time that Bristol Press had. Literally, yeah, it's amazing, it's amazing. So, thank God you're still around. You and Jack giving us something.
By the way, Dave, we won 15 in a row after that game.
Pardon me?
We won 15 in a row.
Oh, yeah. I don't know, I got a couple in here the next couple of years where I beat you pitching and I beat you on the line.
Who's next?
I was the Eastern killer.
You were pretty good. Maybe you're next, you remember?
Yeah, I'm next.
All right, go for it. There we go.
Hello, my name's Dave Pasavage. I graduated St. Paul in 1978. I moved to Bristol in the end of 1969. So when you guys called me, thank you for calling me and inviting me here, but you said something about reminiscing about the 70s sports. So I kind of wanted to, since I just moved into Bristol in the 70s, I wanted to give you kind of an idea of the sports I went through in the 70s. And it touches a lot of people in this room. When I was, we were out of New Jersey, and my dad got a job for immigration out of Hartford, so we moved into Bristol. And we went to Stafford School. We joined the Boys Club, my brother and I, and they gave you these little cards. For Bristol. And they gave you these little wooden cards almost that you put around your neck with a shoelace. And Friday nights, Stafford School would open up the gym, and Mr. Bates would be the counselor there, and my brother and I would go down, and it was the best place to go on a Friday night. You get down there, you played basketball, you played kickball where you could throw the ball and hit somebody running around the bases, you played dodgeball. But my biggest memory, walking in the gym, Mr. Bates would grab me, and he'd say, "You go down the corner of that basket and play Jimmy to 15. And Dean, when David's done playing Jimmy at 15, you play him at 15. So we had to toughen Jimmy Bates up. Really, I appreciate that. Really. But that was my memory there. So the next memory was my sports with Mr. G at Stafford School. He was my first coach, and I remember going out for the team, and I hadn't really been playing basketball. I don't know how old I was, maybe 13 or something like that. But I was tall. And my first practice, I remember he took a chair and he put the chair behind the hoop. People were taking layups. Now, if you're no kids and they run down, they take a layup and they go flying through past the hoop. So Mr. G put a chair and says, you're going to take a hard layup and you're not going to fall over this chair. You're just going to go straight up. And I always remember that little lesson there. And the next lesson, you had to take a shower after practice or after a game. And that was like, oh, really? You know, you come into 7th grade, you're just getting an adolescence, and you had to take that shower. It was pretty fun. It was pretty fun. And then it was a cold night. By the time I walked home, my hair was frozen on my head.
Shirt and tie every day.
Yeah, shirt and tie in the games, yeah. And I went through, Mr. G knew all the players from his first team from basketball. He just named them. I had a picture, and he just named them all. It's pretty amazing.
Always one step better.
Yeah. The next kind of a memory growing up with the sports in town, and these are all sports things, was Little League. When I was 11 years old, my brother and I, we didn't even play baseball. And my father talked us into going out for Little League. We said, okay, we'll go out for Little League. We didn't have gloves. And my brother was a lefty. And so my mother went to Goodwill. And she brought home a catcher's mitt. And it was a right-handed catcher's mitt and a little left-handed glove. So back in Forestville Little League, they lined up on the fence. We went lined up on the fence. And the coaches went through and they were picking players. And Bob Watson comes up to me and he goes, oh, you're a catcher? Can you catch? I go, I can learn. He goes, good, because I need a catcher. So he picked me on his team. And then right after he goes, you have a cup? I go, what's a cup? He goes, follow me to my house. I'm going to get you a cup. And he had a big box of cups and jock straps. But I played my Little League with Jimmy Bates. Spec Monaco was on the team. We won it that year. We won it my last year, too. I think they won it my brother's last year, too. He was pretty good, too. They had a good team. But yeah,
Don't skip over the 25 and no Dodgers.
which one was that?
My last year.
Oh, your last year?
Next
With Deans, yeah, you guys were good, yeah. And Spec, of course, and Brian Samard. They had some awesome players. But, you know, I was going through, and Mr. Watson, he was special. He really was, Bob. He was a really special guy. I couldn't believe I found this. He had given out a little Dodgers folder. It says Dodgers. And then he had all the players sign it with their signature on the inside, and the team picture that was in the paper. And then he said, to my Dodgers, congratulations for helping us to win the championship of the Forestville Little League. I'm very proud of our fine team and will be following your names as you grow up to adulthood. Please keep in touch with your Dodger organization in the future years as you're a group of wonderful boys. I must have said that to a lot of players. I mean, that was awesome. So growing up, through the school system with Mr. G, Little League, with Bob Watson, I had an awesome development. So that brings me to St. Paul. So I got to St. Paul, and Mr. Krampitz was actually my first coach at St. Paul. You helped Bill Highland with the freshman football team.
Defensive guy, right?
By the way, just to go back to that, you told that story 5 years ago and it was 3 straight touchdowns. Now it's 6 straight touchdowns.
Oh, you're the president.
So I forgot a couple things just growing up a little bit. Let me touch on that. Bristol Boys Club, I hadn't touched about it. Joey DeFlippy, myself, and Jimmy Bates, we won the 13 and under basketball state championship for Bristol and the 14 and under basketball state championship. I think Kaczynski was on the team. I have some of the other players, but I saw you too, and I thought about that. And that, who was the coach? Was it your dad was the coach? Your dad was the coach.
Then later we had
Great for that.
Dave coach.
Dave for that, in Grant for that.
0-10, but I couldn't. You were a good driver of the bus, though.
No, we didn't have a bus. We didn't have a bus.
Station wagon.
We had this huge station wagon. It was long. It was longer than this room. And it had a seat in the back and it faced out, right?
I drove that thing.
And we were going to a game. I forget who threw up because they were driving backwards. So we packed all the kids in and they threw up in the car. I don't know what it was going down.
Don't sell yourself short of that.
No, that was from the Boys Club. That was awesome. Those years. So I got to high school, and I know Frank's team's ahead of us with Coach Palladino. The first time I met Coach Palladino, I went to, you used to have basketball camps, right? And I got the most improved. I didn't know if that was just to give me an award to try to go to St. Paul or what, but I have a little certificate there, most improved. So, yeah, I ended up going to St. Paul. Sorry about Bristol Eastern. I'm literally a stone's throw away. I grew up from Bristol Eastern. But
At least your brother's smart though.
yeah, well, I wanted to play for Coach Palladino. I didn't want to play for Coach Punzo. And that was the main reason I went to St. Paul. And then you left. But I got Coach Fran Serratore, which Coach Fran, I love Coach Fran Serratore. I wish he was here today. I tell him the best days of my lives were playing with the coach, even though, you know, we had a tough team. We had a tough act to follow with Frank's team. But it seemed like the HCC, when Frank was there was no big guys playing. There was only, these guys were good. Right?
Steve Balk and 6'9".
No, I get to the ACC, I'm playing, and I got John Pinone, who goes off to Villanova. I got Storm and Norman Bailey I'm playing against. I'm playing against Rod Foster. I'm playing against Rudy Alvarez. I'm playing all these All-Americans, but you guys had all the Americans on your team, so it was just funny. I looked up some of my notes here, and the only games I kind of remember was when we played Corny Thompson, Sean Moore's senior year. We played him in New Britain. Corny dumped 33 and had 33 rebounds for Middletown. But they had these little guards. They were 5 foot. Sorry about
High power. High power.
I don't know who the two guards were, but they were these short little guards. They were 8 or something. But I asked Sean Moore today if he was coming. I go, because you got to come, because I was going to mention the Middletown Cornelius Thompson dropped 33 points on you. You should come.
Well, he was gonna come until you said that.
And then I looked at the stats. I had a double-double, 11 and 10. Didn't score anything. I go, see, I had a double-double.
Our senior year, we beat them. That was the last time we lost.
Oh, really? They were undefeated that year, yeah.
No, they
Well, the year we played.
yeah, because he was a freshman and we were seniors, and they ended up going undefeated 3 years in a row after that.
In baseball, I played baseball, like I said, it was with Frank. His senior year, I was a freshman. Our sophomore year, we had 5 sophomore infield players around the horn, third base, short, second, first, and catching. We had all 5 sophomores, and we went to the state championship game that year. And one of my only memories, it's a bad memory. There was a throw that came from center field and went through my legs as a catcher, and 2 runs scored. I think we lost 5-3, but that was a bad memory. Not a good memory, but a
Should have
bad.
left it in the outfield.
Do you remember that game? Yeah. I think it was Gilbert. But
Yes.
yeah, it was Gilbert. Yeah.
More.
And then yeah, and then for basketball, my biggest memory was the shot that didn't count, and that was against Bristol Central, Joey's team. Joey's team was, I think, 11-1 or 12-1. He only had 1 loss, I think, his senior year. I think it was the Eastern too. I think in the world, Britain. So Bristol Central, they came to our building. We were up 10 at halftime. I got cut from underneath, and I fell down on my back, and I couldn't come back the second half, and then you guys beat us at our place. But then we went up to Bristol Central. Back then, sports in town, like with the Bristol Press, you could read what's going on, you knew who was playing, and it got people interested. And when we went to up at the Bristol Central, we were down 2 points, and I got the ball. I went on Kaczynski, and I shot it over Kaczynski, and it went in, and everybody was screaming. It was just a tie game. But the referees ended up calling no good. And then one of the press writers Dave Pasavage went to bed thinking he tied the score or something like that. It was pretty funny. But that's
That Greenleaf.
And then I went on to Legion. Frank, I went on to Legion. I had one funny memory from Legion though, was we were in the state championship, and I don't know if anybody knows Joe Archambault. Jumping Joe Archambault?
Queen.
He loved Queen.
Yeah, he'll be back.
So
He's coming.
we were going to the game in the
September
in the bus.
9th.
We were going to the game in the bus, and we're driving in, and there's the Waterbury team, and here's Joe singing Queen, and we're all on the bus singing with him. Waterbury team, just like we were crazy, but that was pretty funny. We ended up losing that game.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave.
That's it.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, a couple things. I'm going to continue what Dave was talking about with the Bristol Press. I remember our freshman year of basketball, they had a really good team, we had a good team. Bristol Press put in like big articles on our freshman teams because they were so good and like when we were playing and all that. Now we can't even get a varsity game in the paper. The other thing was we beat Panone that year in the quarterfinals.
They beat Benoni.
We beat him. He scored 38. Yeah. Couple things I like to talk about since we have some people that are trying to get some of these coaches over here involved. My first freshman football practice, how I became the quarterback. Dave Talmadge and Bob DeSantis are the coaches, and there's 4 people going out for quarterback. Hector Vega, who's like Michael Vick, you ever seen him throw a ball like 50 yards, Scott Bojan, Hassler, and me. And so before practice, these guys were throwing the ball like 40 yards, like nothing. I could barely, my hand's so small I could barely hold the ball. I'm used to like the skinny midget football. I was good with that. Couldn't hold it. So we go. Dave wants to give Hector the first shot at quarterback. So he tells him to play 2B dive. Hector, half English, half Spanish, talking 100 miles an hour. Goes in the huddle, nobody knows what he's talking about. All right, next, Bozier, 2B dive. He goes from here to the chair. He forgets the play. He can't remember the play. He's 3 feet away. Hassler, you're next. Hassler couldn't handle the snap. Like 5 times a raw fumble. So he finally made a good decision to put me in. I can remember the play, and I can take a snap. Perfect. That's how the career started. Couple things I figure we'll do it since a lot of coaches here. A couple things you did in the 70s that you probably wouldn't want to do now. Eddie already hit on one. Fred Malin. We got hit plenty of times with the Fred Malin punch. But Ralph LePage had a few things you couldn't do that he mentioned. One time, it was my junior year, and he had a great rule, you don't hit the quarterback. So I had my yellow penny on, and Dave Clegg bumped me. So as he was falling down, and Ralph ready to kick him in the butt, all you can hear is Dave falling. I got blocked into him. He was screaming. He got kicked anyways. The other thing is, halftime. You keep your helmet on. I don't know how many clipboards got broken at halftime over people's heads. I don't think you probably get away with that anymore. Coach Bates, Jimmy's dad, Dave mentioned our Boys Club team. I don't think he can coach cigarettes on the sideline of the Bristol Boys Club and put the cigarette out on the floor during practice. I don't think he can get away with that anymore. Football coaches can't hand out salt tablets in between practice on the game, Mark. Probably not a good idea. The other thing, middle school, Rick coached middle school. They used to, like baseball, they put the kids on the stairs and pick the team right in front of everybody. So you know who made it, who didn't make it. So Charlie tees that first pick. He goes, I got Joe. So Joey Bro stands up and starts walking over. He goes, no, the other Joe. So I don't think they do that anymore. What else? Yeah. A couple things as a player you probably don't want to do nowadays. You probably don't want to use your pillowcase as your gym bag. That probably won't go over too big. I remember just so excited to order those Pro Keds up in Waterbury and get the defects for cheap. You put them on, they're like 5 pounds each. I don't think you want to play in those. Or you can wear the Chuck Taylors. You wear those, and after 3 weeks, all the brown sweat stains are on, and you keep playing with them. Like, I don't think kids would do that anymore. Yeah, they were cheap. The other thing I remember, I can't believe we did it all the time, but wear your gym shorts over your sweatpants. That was the thing. I don't think anybody wants to do that anymore. But I was very fortunate to have some great coaches the whole time, starting in Little League with Pete's dad, and then all through high school, Papazian, obviously Coach Bates, and the basketball. Then, Freddie was good. I had Kobe too, so I was very fortunate. And then I got to play with some great players. Hassler, Gary Pearson. I mean, just Jeff Thomas. They test a lot of football, basketball. Great players. Bruce, obviously. That you're just still great friends with. Just like the bonds never ends. And it's very fortunate and lucky to have played in the 70s and got to play against, competition like Dave and Jimmy and baseball with Speck over there. And, just a lot of good athletes, a lot of good teams, a lot of good competition, and the coaching was good and just a good time. 70s were good. Yeah, Mikey G.
Joe, what famous baseball record do you hold? Come on, you gotta tell.
Played all 9 positions in one game. They've done all games except junior year. All the games are 7 innings, so nobody can break it now.
So whose idea was that?
Bill McCool's.
Coach?
Bill McCool, yeah. Yeah. And we won the game.
Bert Campaneris.
Yeah. Then,
Steve Langs.
Tolliver go too?
Steve Langs.
Tovar.
Cesar Tovar.
Yeah, he did it too. Yeah, I got a couple other football things we probably can't mention. I don't want to get anybody in trouble. You're welcome.
Just to touch base on Coach Papazian hit people, we were in a huddle one day and Costas Diamantis was a lineman and he kept on screwing up. And Ralph kicked him in the butt and he jumped off the ground. I swear to God, it'd be 3 feet. And then Richie Garbo was player, at least that player of the week. Every questions that player of the week, they had big write-ups.
Yeah.
And I think Richie Garbo won in 1 week and we're practicing. There was a soccer game going on and he must have fumbled 3 or 4 times and Ralph screams, Garbo, next time you get player of the week in Czechoslovakia, I think the soccer game stopped, they all looked behind it. And there's Richie cowering down and Ralph screaming at him. It was fun though.
One other good thing about 70s, I remember when I was in high school, we got all the football games were on WBS. So you could listen to the games, so as you're in middle school, you could, they were playing. I remember Brian Godbout filled in for Richie one game because Richie got hurt and I think he scored like 4 touchdowns, right? Chuck, were you coaching that? Richie got hurt, Brian came in as like a sophomore, scored 4 touchdowns, like against Hall or Connor or somebody. I remember that as a little kid. Good times.
We didn't mean to have Gail be last here, honestly. She just happened to draw
I did draw the 6.
Right?
I did draw the
And
6.
it's incredible, I'll introduce her, and she doesn't need any introduction, but obviously the 70s were very important. If anybody's been listening to all the things that are going on now, the 50th anniversary of Title IX is happening now, and that happened in the 70s actually. So Gail, I don't want to steal your thunder. Go ahead, tell some stories.
You know, I sit here and I listen to all the guys talking about their Little League experience and the boys club experience and this and that. Guess what? There was hardly anything for girls when I was growing up in the 60s. You know, I was young in the 60s. But my mom, I mean, like I was younger than high school. The 60s were before my high school times, but my mom obviously saw something in me that I needed, something athletic to do. And we ended up at the pool and the swim team. So first she got me into baton. Not baton. But I saw the pool and I'm like, oh, we used to go to the sessions there, you know, in the afternoon. I'm like, how come those kids get to swim in the morning? I was thinking, I'm gonna find out about that. So my mom investigated, it was a swim team. So that was my start to athletics in Bristol, because there was basically nothing else. Okay, so it was a great.
Did you swim the Mannings?
Mannings, the Wrights, the Sams, Chris Riley, the Reedies. I mean, it was a wonderful experience, and good coaches again, with Mrs. Wright, was our coach, and it was just awesome, you know. But that's all there was when I was growing up. So it's interesting to hear, you know. And I went to the '60s program last year too. And I think there was one sentence mentioned at the end of a 2-hour program about a woman that played sports back in the 60s, and I think it was Bev Strong got mentioned. You know, so I'm sitting here for 2 of these programs, and you know, here I'm the 6th person, and finally get to say something about the women's sports, because it really, the 70s was just, it was incredible, the start of the whole explosion here. I got out all my yearbooks the other day. They're all sitting on the table there. There were 21 boys' sports when I entered Bristol Eastern in '71. There were 3 girls. Okay, 21 to 3. Now, we had Joanne Galati. She was quite the dynamic person that she was, and she really got things going. She had some teams that started in the 60s, and there were some really good athletes. Debbie James, and I remember Jan Carter. They were like the older ones when I came in, and Eastern just was loaded with athletes. It was loaded at that time, and Title IX came in 1972. All right, and you know, I was 13, 14 years old. I didn't know anything. I mean, I swam. I had, you know, my swim team. I was really into it at the time, and I didn't really understand what it was all about. Only that, you know, the boys in my neighborhood could go play in all these organized sports, and I didn't have any of that. But when I got to Eastern and all this Title IX stuff was starting up, it was like, wow, this is pretty cool. So I played softball my freshman year. I was a swimmer, so my season was over in March. So I said, you know, I played softball on the street with all my friends, all my neighbors. I got a glove. I didn't know a glove for softball. And that was my first experience, you know, with an organized team sport like that. And then it just took off from there. But I could see, you know, at the time, you know, Tom Monahan was the AD, and obviously it was kind of scary, I would think, for the athletic department, seeing the women's sports. Okay, we got to give them equal opportunities here. How are we going to fund it? What's going to happen? You know, I remember we didn't really have uniforms. My first year of softball, we bought our own shirts and sewed our own numbers on the shirts. Yeah, if you look in our yearbooks, but that's what we did. If you wanted to play, that's what you did. So we all bought our own shirts and sewed our numbers on. We wore those for 3 years. Finally got new uniforms my junior year, and we got volleyball in my senior year. We wore the same uniform. Coach Galati handed the uniform out in September. I turned it in June. We wore the same uniform for every sport. Every sport. There was no, you know, like I said, they passed this Title IX, but now how are they going to fund it? You know, Coach Monahan, Mr. Monahan gave Joanne rubber softballs for us to practice with. Well, you don't play games with rubber softballs. That's what the PE department used. That's what he gave her for our equipment. You know, so it was like really a battle, you know, to try to get this through. And Joanne was the right person for it, because she was a go-getter. She was a little dynamo, you know, all 5'3" of her. So she was really the person that got everything going, I think, for Bristol Eastern. And we had some great teams. I mean, we won our conference tournament, or our conference several years in basketball, same with softball. We just had some awesome athletes. Tammy Chapman came in, she was 76. I had people in my class, Coral O'Keefe, Diane McKinney, Darlene Martin. I don't know if you guys remember any of these names, but this was, these were the people that when I got to Eastern, when you're in middle school, here I am, an athletic girl. You don't have a lot of athletes around you, but when you go to high school, all of a sudden, it all opens up like, wow, there's other girls like me, other girls that want to play sports. So it was pretty eye-opening, and I'm still friends with many of the girls and women that I played with. Still see Joanne, time to time. It was just a wonderful time to be a part of it. And then I coached, in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, just to see how everything exploded from there. It was just really amazing. That was about. I had a lot of funny stories. We just had so much fun. We used to just hang out together. Patty Tompkins was the other one I brought up to you, in Fu Field. We just all hung out together. We did everything together. We go to Northern Park at night and play basketball. It was just, we did everything together, and it was like you finally found other people like you, and it was a wonderful experience. It was a good time to be part of the 70s. Were really something. They were a good time. Yeah.
Gary?
Yeah, I'd like to congratulate you on a tremendous career, number one.
Thank you.
You're obviously a legend. I'll go back to 1963.
Okay.
You talk about women's influence in sports. Miss Lapp.
Oh.
Coach Mills remembers Miss Lapp?
Miss Lapp, I remember Miss Lapp.
It was March. Miss Lapp, I was there, walks into Coach Monahan's office and asks him if the ladies could have practice time after school to practice volleyball.
Okay.
63.
In 63.
And Coach Carlson, who was just as tough as Coach Bates, he taught us mental toughness to the highest degree, trust me. He said, when she asked for equal time, alternate days at 2:30, he said, no, this is boys' time, not girls. She was the one that really influenced women's sports, in my opinion, back in '63.
Okay.
Coach Carlson resigned. Coach Clenzo took over. Coach Carlson was Fred Shable's assistant at UConn. A year after that, he stayed. With Title IX in '72, I never forget it, it was like yesterday. Now that's 60 years ago.
Right.
Well, when Title IX came in '72, when I was asked at the University of Harvard, we're going to Division I, what do you think? I said, it's a mistake because of Title IX. If you're talking about paying John Gallagher $275,000, you're going to be paying the $300,000, all right? And over time, it's just not feasible because they're not going to have the fan base. And I'll never forget that period because women obviously deserve equal representation. You are a legend because of what you accomplished. We had the courage to say that, Mr. Monahan, we'd like to practice at 2:30.
It was really Joanne that, she was my mentor. I always, growing up, I always wanted to be a teacher. But when I got to Eastern, and she was my coach, she was just so charismatic, and she just, and that's when I decided that, I wanted to be a coach, and I wanted to go into physical education. She was the one that did it, yeah. So I give her all the credit. I just fought.
I agree with both of you.
Thank you.
Equal. Tremendous.
I think there was a lot of apprehensive on the men's side.
Absolutely.
You know, you hear, that, they're gonna end up cutting, we're not gonna have the money, but did we ever lose any programs, men's programs, boys' programs? But that was the fear, that they weren't gonna have enough money to fund everybody.
Let me just say one more thing, right? I am so impressed with what everyone has done in Bristol. All right? I live in West Haven, I've been there for 25 years now. It's a very similar community, they're very sports oriented in West Haven, and Notre Dame High School. But I wish the kids today understood the value of memories and people. It's all about people's relationships. See, Bugaki, all these guys are coaches. And everyone said the same thing. Everyone has talked about the same thing. We are all as good as the people around us. You're all talking about people. People that initiated your greatness. Influence. I would never miss something like this because I appreciate Coach Mills calling me up. So don't forget. I'm so glad you got the most improved. To this day, I'll tell you the truth, it's the biggest regret I ever.
Bow and arrow.
You know what?
Bow and arrow foul shot.
You know what?
Right? Yeah.
I won 459 high school games. Wasn't for Frank O'Shanko shot at Guilford before 496, and everybody would stop telling me you should have won 500. But the more important thing is, it's not about the wins; it's about the people.
I used to tell, can I just, when you touch on that, when my kids are trying to, were playing sports, and I would say, guys, you will remember your teammates your whole life. You're not going to remember that kid sitting next to you in English class. So when you come back to town, you're going to know who your old teammates were. And I believe in that.
There's a lot of highlights tonight, but one of the highlights was St. Stan's mentioning those guys' names. They're going down in history. Those Polish guys. I love that. And I'm sure more in the world will give me the same list of Italian guys.
Well, I want to talk about people, being a coach. One year, we got invited to all these weddings. My wife and I are going to all these weddings, so. A photographer comes up to my wife and says, are you professional wedding attendees? I don't want to tell you what it cost me in dresses, but, you can't have a new dress every time you win. The relationships they develop, the Christmas cards, the long-term things, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about.
Jim.
Real quick, Miss Galati, went to Eastern, the girls always practiced before the boys, just how the schedule was.
Okay.
And my dad would make me watch the girls practice, because he said you'll get as much out of watching her instructor as me. So he wasn't an easy guy to get respect from, but he had that level of respect for Miss Galati.
She was real pioneer. I mean, I can still remember some of the drills she ran for us. I mean, it was just, she was so far ahead of her time.
Yeah.
She was willing to give that first practice up. And your dad said to her, Joanne, you're a winner.
There you go.
Practice anytime you want.
Great, just amazing.
Great comment, Coach.
It's just me on the other end of it. Obviously, coaching at the time, it was very difficult, very, very difficult for me and for a lot of the staff, a lot of the people that were there to accept the girls playing. You knew it was the right thing, there's no question about that, but you didn't know how it was going to be implemented and what would be happening, you know what I mean? And obviously, you can see what's happened, obviously, over 50 years. And now it's amazing what girls' sports are. Remember UConn 15 years ago or 20 years ago when boys weren't doing very well, and there was the whole thing that the girls would beat the boys. Remember all that they talked about, but there were so many things, and now obviously you see what Paige Beckers does, or some of the girls that are there, and she's probably the highest paid NIL person in UConn, making more than anybody else, so you can tell where it's come. So obviously it's something that everybody learned. I guess it's just, you stay with things and you get things going. I want to have Jack tell one story if I could. This is the most famous, and I'll open it up to anybody else. This is a football story, and it also involves New Britain High School. Jack was the head coach. You heard about the Cocken rule And now the Cochran rule was that you have to, if you scored more than 50 points, they had, I forget what the rule was because it was never in there, but Jack, the most famous thing that I ever heard about was that you were playing them and then remember they had shut you out or made some scores and you remember that story, that was Jack.
Do we really always have to talk about this stuff?
I just was talking about your win.
This is when you're now the offensive coordinator.
I find this very painful.
It's so funny, so please don't. That had nothing to do with your.
I will tell that story, but just to inject one other thing. There have been several mentions about missing the Bristol Press the way it used to be and everything else. And I know there was just a quick mention of a online newspaper in Bristol now called the Bristol Edition. And I am part of that.
Yep.
And we have by far the best sports writer in Bristol who writes articles in the vein of the old Bristol Press. And that is Mr. Mike Latendra, sitting right back there. And Mike just compiled a book of all his articles of last year's Bristol Central State Championship season called The Dream Team. You can get it on Amazon, or I'm sure you can get it from Mike, or you can get it from contacting us at the Bristol Edition. And again, just go on bristoledition.org. We do ask if people are going to be regular readers that they, chip in about $6 a month so that they can get all the articles. We're trying to build our reporter group. We only have one sports reporter, and he does everything, which is really kind of amazing and pisses me off because I'm the sports editor, and then he sends me a text saying, Jack, there's 11 stories for you to edit, and it's like, I won't tell you what I say. But anyway, bristoledition.org. So, and talk to Mike after. He might even have a couple of copies with him here. In fact, we're going to give one away at the end. Okay, to get back to that story about Jack Cochran, it's very painful. This was, and by the way, Cochran was also the coach, and it was not 6 touchdowns. They ran 2 sweeps around the end, and we did not touch them. But in our defense, their fastest 24 kids were faster than our fastest kid. And our fastest kid had polio. So there was all sorts of stuff going on, and it wasn't fair. And of course, Swick turns to me and goes, oh, they ran right down the sideline, nobody touched them. It's like, Swick, did you see who was playing quarterback? Anyway, this is a couple years later. Swick is gone now. I am the head coach at Eastern, one of their unfortunate decisions. And we're playing New Britain at Muzzy Field, and we're playing them actually pretty tough. The score is 18-0 at halftime, and we go in and we're like high-fiving each other. We held New Britain to 18 points, and Cochran is in the other locker room. We can hear him screaming at his players, you only scored 18 points against these pieces of crap. And so anyway, we get out in the second half. We get to the end of the game, and the score is, I believe, 32-0 at that point. There's about 1:10 left in the game, and they punt to us, and we get the ball on about our own 40-yard line, and we just want to get out of there. So we call a dive into the line, and sure enough, Cochran calls timeout. So I go out to the huddle, and the ref is looking at me, and I go, are you kidding me? And he goes, I don't know, what can I tell you? Anyway, we run 2 more dives into the line, timeout, timeout, timeout. We have to punt on 4th down with about 10 seconds to go. Britain runs in reverse. They go down the sideline, score a touchdown with no time left on the clock to go ahead 38-0. And the referees are so disgusted, they walk off the field. They leave. Armin Chenier's up running the clock. He turns the clock off. The clock is off, the refs are gone, and Cochran sends his extra point team out onto the field and starts running across the field to tell the refs, hey, we got to go for the extra point. And the ref gave him one of his digits as a salute and went into the dugout. And our defensive guy, Brett Quinion, says, all right, defense, get out there. And I said, no, keep him here. Keep him here. So we just stood on the sideline, Britain went out, and they kicked the extra point. So you get to the stupid handshake line, and we're shaking hands, and Cochran gets to me, and he goes, "Coach," he goes, "no disrespect against you guys," he goes, "but the rule is at the end of the game, if you score and there's no time left, you go for the extra point." And I said, "Oh, no, there's no hard feelings." I said, "We're just happy you didn't go for 2."
Brad, you got a story, come on. You got something, you have to have something out there. Gee, anybody got heart? Anybody have something?
Brad can think about it, but I did want to add on to Joe's comment about the cigarettes with my dad. You didn't experience him mistaking his cigarette for his whistle. While he was smoking it, he'd blow the whistle, but he'd blow the cigarette, usually off Mr. G. Thank God you replaced that floor because it was all cigarette burns.
How many packs did he do at practice? A couple? He was.
Yeah, if he was in a good mood, just to go.
Anybody? No, we want to open it up to the.
Can I have a Mr. Bates story?
I just want to attest to Gail's athletic ability.
Oh, jeez.
She's the only person I ever passed to in the student faculty game. I touched it, I shot it. When I saw her, I said, I hate her. She was,
Appreciate it.
Did you make it?
oh, you
Of
could,
course, huh?
she was money.
I know now we're picking on Mr. Bates, but Mr. Bates would take Jimmy up to Page Park maybe 5 days a week and just throw bat practice
And a slow week.
all the time. So every once in a while, I'd walk through and he'd go, "Hey, you want to field some balls with Jimmy?" And I go, "Okay." So I go out there, field some balls, and he'd pack up. I go, I'm like, "Where's my turn to hit?" He goes, "I'll give you 5 swings."
That sounded like me when I was the catcher. You were a catcher at baseball practice? You either batted first, right, or last. If you were first, it's okay. We got to get everybody else on the team. You're last. It's like, okay, we got to go. So if you were the catcher, right?
Yeah.
How many swings did you get? Not many swings at all. Not many swings at all. Yes, Mike.
Yeah, they mentioned Benny Brzezicki before.
Oh, yeah.
And I got to tell Benny Brzezicki's story. Benny was coaching St. Stan's Grammar School, and I was playing for Southside. And we were playing them at Muzzy Field. Last out of the game, kid goes to steal second base, and I throw him out, game over, we win. He walks, he don't know me from Adam, so we're walking out, and he says to me, "That was quite a throw, son." Well, go forward a month or so, and they had the draft for the Pony League, and he was the coach of the Boys Club. So he drafted me on the Boys Club. First game, first guy that goes out to steal, I throw a little dribbler down to second base, the guy's saved by a mile. He goes, "You damn Italians," he goes, "When you play against me," he goes, "you kill me. When you play for me, you kill me."
That was Benny.
Yeah.
Can I tell a Benny story? Sure. Pony League. I'm in 8th grade. Benny's coaching the Cubs. I get up. Again, I'm in 8th grade, so my face was not very good. I hit a triple. I'm standing on third, out of breath. Benny comes up to me. They're going to change pitchers. He passed me on the back. He goes, "When are you going to get rid of that acne?" I swear to God.
Your self-esteem, right? We're worried about self-esteem.
My mother was bad enough, you know.
Dennis, you got anything? Dennis Sigmund, everybody knows Dennis. He's been around for a long time as a coach, and now he's.
Well, I came into Bristol in 72, 73, the 73 graduating class. And so yeah, I'm listening to everybody talk, and we're talking about smoking. So I remember coaching wrestling with Chuck and Barbara Belmonte coaching volleyball down there, sitting on the wooden bleachers, smoking away and putting their cigarettes. And my guys would go down, and Chuck, they'd use the boys club for the steam room and stuff, and Yash had already gone, but he'd give him a ride home, and they'd come back and say, "Coach, you're not going to believe this car's got cigarettes all over it, inside, on the window, on the floor." And, like Joe said, today that doesn't go. But back then, I I taught for 4 years prior to coming up here to Connecticut in Pennsylvania, where I grew up. And I grew up in Bristol, Pennsylvania, and then came here. That's a story in itself. But coming to a town like this, that was just an athletic town. I mean, you guys, I look around, you guys are all legends, you know, and you know, you go to St. Paul and we hear about the legends at St. Paul. You know, Billy Highland was the wrestling coach. He's a legend in his own, you know. At Eastern, Phil Tata. There's another guy.
Did in his classroom.
Yeah.
Yeah. I became, a Phil Tata story, I became the department head for science for both schools. And I had to share an office next to Phil's room, Phil's office. Every day, A day, B day, every day I went to Eastern, my desk and everything in my office was in the hall. Because Phil threw it all out and told me I didn't belong in Bristol Eastern. But, you know, great rivalries, even in wrestling, they were great rivalries. And Joanne, you talked about Joanne, you know, just a special person for girls sports. I remember I was coaching wrestling, and the volleyball job at Central was open, you know, and I said, well, shit, nobody wants the job, so I'll do it just to keep the sport going. Well, Kathy Franklin had moved into town.
Jeez.
She wasn't teaching yet. And then according to our union, I get the job because she wasn't a teacher, she wasn't in the union. And so Joanne calls me in and she says, listen, I'm going to give the job to Kathy Franklin. I said, you can't. She goes, don't tell me what I can do. I'm telling, and she's pointing her finger at me like this. Yeah.
It's two fingers.
I'm going to do this, and you're not going to do shit. I go, wait a minute, I'm the wrestling coach. I got to work with her? Okay, Kathy Franklin can have the job.
You used to call it the snake.
Yeah, all the time.
She would get you right in the chest and let you have it. That's Fu and PT probably were the recipient of most of it.
If Fu was here, she'd have
I
a
know.
million stories. You know,
I looked at pictures the other day, and you know, you go through the yearbook, and it's like, you know, she just.
And then I got to know Gail when I became principal at Northeast, and
You know, you had the Eastern Central thing all the time. I was Eastern. You know, I don't have any room called blue. You know, I'm blue and gray. I used to work at Northeast, and I'm like, hey, this guy's okay. It's okay, I like this guy.
Let me just tell a quick story about that, blue and gray. I mean, obviously all my kids went to Eastern. I was at Eastern for a long time, 37 years. So my grandson goes to Central, okay? And obviously he wants to get me a sweatshirt. So I wouldn't get a maroon sweatshirt the first year. So I said, Carson, you get me a sweatshirt next year if you want. So what he does, he goes over to Central Connecticut, buys a blue Central shirt so I can wear it again. And that's where it went to. I mean, that's, you know, finally as a senior, I got a gray one. It was a gray one with maroon on it. That's where, that was the rivalry that was there, and it was that intense. It was just unbelievable.
But I can add to that story.
Sure, go ahead.
My daughter came to all my games. She used to come in the carrier to the games, and after 3 years, it just got to be a little too much, and I retired. It was too much for my husband. He was trying to do everything. But all this time, my daughter's going to go to Eastern. I live in Central's district. It didn't matter. She was going to Eastern, middle of 8th grade. But hey, Mom, you know, I'm thinking it's going to be too much trouble for you to drive me to Eastern. I think I want to go to Central. And I just looked at her, I said, it's not about me. This is about you. If you want to go to Central, you go to Central. All her friends from Chippens, you know, they're all going to Central. Well, she plays volleyball, of course. I didn't push it, but she plays volleyball. And so my husband and I go up to the games. You know, we're at every game. Well, they're having a maroon out one night. I have no maroon clothes, none. So the guys are all busting my chops when I'm going to all these games now. I'm the Eastern person. You know, I got Tony Carrier, I got DeSantis, I got Pirog, I got Wininger. I mean, it was embarrassing to walk in there, but I did it. Well, I needed a maroon shirt. So I said to Bob, because they have them for the freshman orientation, because my daughter came home with one. I said, Bob, I need a maroon shirt. Do you have any maroon shirts left over? Oh, yeah. He goes in the box, he pulls some out. I had no maroon clothes. None. Neither did my husband. So we got our maroon shirts. And I still have that maroon shirt. So there you go.
Speck, I'll get you in a minute. The extreme, everybody remembers Al Mancini. We both had Caravans, Dodge Caravans. I had a blue one, he had a maroon. Unbelievable, just incredible, you know? Speck, you got something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add like a little 75 baseball first release there when Coach G stepped in. And our first team meeting in room 263, you know, I forget exactly what time the meeting was, 3 o'clock, let's say, and all of a sudden he comes walking into the room. And there was a lot of people going out that year. Door shuts, and 30 seconds later, nicest kid in the world comes through the door, Steve Jandro. He's late though. She set the tone right then and there. You, out of here.
Was it?
Yeah, yeah. And then one other thing that year, guy skipped school, I think after beating Central, and then coach found out, and you know, I mean, he did what a coach does back then. I mean, he just said, "Hey, you guys skipped. You aren't practicing today."
He made a deal with me that night. I skipped school. We all went to the beach, except for the Bedoin brothers, I think. And,
they went too.
And I got sunburned, and he made me catch the whole practice with that protector on.
And then the other thing was when we always did our long lap around Morris Avenue, Louisiana, and King Street, when the guys cut through, or a lot of guys did.
Well, some guys got in the car and got around.
Yeah, they cut through. Some of them cut through. And some guys cut through from Louisiana through the back over the swamp, the river. And he wheeled and he saw people running through, and threw everybody out of practice that day too.
No, that was, I'll embellish that story.
What's that?
We, you know, that was one of the worst days of my life. But anyway, we did that. And he told us to go home, and it was like the first week of practice. And he was checking the field again. Mr. Roy had a philosophy: once we go outside, we're not coming back. So anyway, we were always starting the season slow. But we're waiting in the locker room. I said, "Wait, he'll come back. He'll come back." So about 5 minutes later, G comes back in. He goes, "I told you a-holes to get out of here." So we're all in shock. So Mike Bedoin and I were coming off the 74 Legion team where we went to the World Series. And we said to each other, "We got to go talk to G. You living on South Street Extension, Coach?" Yeah. Mike Bedoin and I went to his house that night to talk to him. The first thing he said to me was, "I remember when I was in high school, I lived for American Legion. Legion was it. High school was okay, but we lived for the Legion season. Now, is that how you guys are going to be? Or you know, is this just high school a stepping stone to Legion?" We were like, Mike and I were like, no. We're like pumped for the season. New coach, we're ready to go. We got a good team. And I mean, he put not only the fear, but the respect of what this program was going to become. And 45 years later, obviously, he made Bristol Eastern one of the top programs in the state. And it started, like Speck said, it starts right there.
Look, honestly, I coached Coach G for 12, 13 years as his assistant. The man never swore once.
Came off the bench.
Baseball.
This is on TV.
Be careful. That's what I said. I never heard him swear once.
Yeah, but then there was also the times where in the 70s, Mike would be coaching, and I was coaching JV baseball at St. Paul, and I didn't have a field. And I called Mike and say, "Are you away?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "Well, can I use your JV field?" He says, "Yeah, we're away." And he says, "We're going to get lined for you, but don't tell anybody that I let you use it." It was basically, you know, he was just helping us out, but he didn't want the Board of Education to get any feeling that...
I would have only done that for you, trust me.
We played many games over East and we shared. And it was like the board didn't have to know crap because he was doing us a favor.
They do now. They do now.
Oh, sorry about that.
Gary?
Yeah, I wanted to mention the Historic Society. They sent out the messages every day about, our history. One of the things that I just recently read was about the name of the Legion Post, which I'm not sure I can even pronounce. But what I never realized was that was a battle where Bristol guys actually lost their lives in a war. I wish we knew that in 1963. We never knew the history of why that post was named after those tremendous heroes of the war. I mean, it's just a piece of trivia that I think every Legion team today should understand. That name represents guys that 18, 19 years old lost their lives, and we're playing for it. We got their uniform on.
Maybe people did realize that they play American Legion instead of AAU today.
That's true. That's true. I thought that was great that they sent that message out. I never knew the history of the post and that battle of all the Bristol guys that passed away.
Chuck, do you want to add anything? You got a guy that was in town, left town, probably the oldest coach in the room right now, aren't you, Chuck? Well, been coaching a long time. How long you been coaching?
Football?
Everything. Total.
Football, I'm now like 54th year.
I don't think anybody.
Basketball at Bristol Central with Joe and with Eddie.
Yeah.
And I did 5 years of girls basketball at Paparot. I did 4 years of wrestling with Coach over there. And he's a great recruiter. So he comes in, and Mr. Monahan said, "You're going up to Central, you got to do wrestling." I didn't wrestle. I wrestled my neighbors because they all went to Hall and I went to Northwest Catholic. I wrestled. If it was in the kitchen, that was good. But on that, I didn't know anything. So Dennis comes in, I said, "All right, you do the coaching, I'll do the paperwork," which I'm shaky on anyways, "but I'll take care of the punishments and all that type of stuff." And it worked out, right?
Yeah.
So he comes up to me and says, Pop Rock High School is looking for a football coach. And I talked to Ralph and Mr. Monahan, that I was like, Ralph was leaving and they were pushing me to be the head coach. Unless a great D1 coach comes and you're not getting it. So he recruits me, and I got the job there. I never went west. I was always the east guy. I never went west. I said, "Where the hell is that place?" I go up there. The best thing that for me, I coached 3 sports there for 16 years. Girls track, wrestling, and football. And I think that's all I did.
Coach Drake started at Stafford before Coach G.
That's true.
And a piece of
You
trivia.
never gave me a check because I left for you.
I'll tell you, trivia, Joe Velarde was my assistant for 11 years in Notre Dame, was working with you at Pop Rock.
Yes, AD.
He was the AD at Pop Rock when you were there. And Joe Velarde is now working for the CIS. He's a judge. He loved you, by the way. He's a lot of respect. Well,
Can I say something? I have a bunch of old trivia and articles and pictures and stuff that I had went through before I came here today. But what amazed me was the midget football articles, okay? They were written in 73, something like that, I think, when I played, by Dave Greenleaf. So if anybody has stories about sports in Bristol, I think Dave Greenleaf should have some stories. You got any stories, Dave? You just wrote them down, that was it.
Which you can still do every Monday, by the way. It's all right every day.
But thank you, though.
Anybody else?
Yeah, just one thing we didn't mention tonight was the Bristol Castles from the 70s. Hey, talk a little bit about the
The
Castles.
Castles, well, you know, we went into the Hartford Twilight League and we won 3 championships during the 70s with a bunch of Hall of Famers from Bristol on that team. Mike Giovinazzo, Bart Beardsley, Dick Snyder, myself, Jimmy Ziovis, Mark Ziovis, John Ziovis, Johnny Chapoulis, Luke Lamboli,
Franco Shenko.
Franco Shenko.
Luke Lamboli.
Luke Lamb, he's not a Bristol guy, but certainly a great player.
Talk about Bristol memories. I played in the Twilight League too, in '68. In the second basement is one of my best friends now. He lives a couple of houses down from me, Skip Falcone, who played at Harvard, who was the captain at Harvard, and he played for St. Louis Cardinals for a few years in the minors. Anyway, our first baseman was Tom Petke. He played at Yale. And McNamara played at shortstop. He was from Providence. Johnson, Roy Johnson, who wrote a lot of baseball books, played at UConn. And Barkers played at UConn. And
I think Tom Petke.
that was a great
home
league, by
runs
the way,
over-
in the '60s.
Didn't he?
Skinny infield.
Little baseball.
And when Frank Thomas got up, I don't know, remember Frank Thomas from Weaver, 6'4", I played like in left field, that's my third base. Yeah, I mean, he hit a ball so hard, it was unbelievable. But that is a great tribute to Bristol, your team, winning those championships. That was a heck of a baseball, that was a AAA baseball program. I thought.
Thank you,
Professional
Gary.
team. That's how good Bristol was to play that league. Great league in the '60s.
Again, Jim's here, but obviously the Legion teams, that was, a lot of people talk about that, the Legion teams. And you talk about WBIS, I don't know which team, what year it was, but I remember going for the state, or the finals, they were up in New Hampshire, and going to the Elks Club to listen to it on the radio. I don't know if you remember that, you can go back, and that's how it was. There's a lot of great things about Bristol with that. Bart?
Well, and I think it's a term you're talking about. When we came back that year, when we got to the Farmington town line, on the bus, the streets were lined with people.
Really?
All the way in. And there were 12 buses of people from Bristol that went up to the games.
Wow. That's amazing.
You're talking about doing the games from New Hampshire, when you're in Manchester, New Hampshire, Jackie Roberts, do the games.
Yep.
And the broadcast was on the top of the roof. We had to carry him up in his wheelchair, but there's no handicapped access. You're not there to those games.
I can remember playing Somerville, and we got beat in '62, and Mark Belanger was a shortstop, and oh my God, I thought Chopin was good. This guy was good, just as good. Mark Belanger, he was a tremendous.
One other point, obviously this book is here, you know, I'm not pushing, I am pushing it for you if you want to read it or whatever, but just think of UConn basketball this year, and just think of how Bristol Pride kind of came together again for everybody, right? I mean, with Donovan Clingan, you know, obviously him playing, him being on TV all the time, and I think he represented the school, the town very well, obviously, just with his attitude, the way he played, etc. And I think he would fit into the mold that we had from a lot of the times that we had players when we were there, back in the 70s, the 60s, and everything else. I mean, he's, you know, obviously he did some great things. And
Going on the first pitch Friday night.
he's throwing out the first pitch of the game.
Friday night game.
Dave, I could jump on something there. Donovan's freshman year, and I told Tim Greg, I gotta bring somebody in, you know.
Yeah.
We don't have anybody this big that knows, has been through it, so I brought in Bruce Kaczynski. And if anybody remembers Donovan as a freshman, he was all dangly. So first thing, Bruce, I introduced him, he comes up, and Donovan's a freshman, he's taller than Bruce. I'm like, Bruce, what's going on? He goes, I go, how tall are you? He goes, well, everyone said he was 6'10", 6'11", UConn. When he got drafted, draft night, lady measured him, Bruce Kaczynski, 6'8".
Is that right?
6'8". But anyway, so he was only 6'8". But anyway, the one thing Bruce told Donovan that day, I'll never forget, He goes, you know, he's watching him play, he goes, just be patient. It's all gonna come together for you. Give it another year or so. And by his sophomore year, it's all, this coordination, like everything caught up, and it was like Bruce nailed it. He said, just be patient, keep working, and everything's gonna come together for you. And he was right.
Hey, Bruce knew.
Sophomore year was
So when he was young, he was so big, when he would jump up, he'd forget to put his legs back down, he'd land on his knees. That's right. That's how coordinated he was.
In addition to Donovan, you gotta remember Victor Rosa.
Yeah.
He scored the most touchdowns for the team.
Yeah. I mean, it's great to see kids like that have, you know, great success, you know. It's,
Yeah, I think Mr. Dickhouse started the Colt League.
What is that?
The Colt League.
Yes,
I believe you started that.
yeah, I did.
And, you know, how many towns create a new baseball league and fund it for kids coming out of Little League who get cut from Pony League and then have no place to play baseball? And then probably never play baseball again? Mr. Dickhouse starts a league, which my dad did for decades, after Legion.
Yes,
Fairly legendary coach. Now coaches kids who are done with Little League and get cut from Pony League. And how he did it with as much, if not more, passion than he ran his Legion team. But how many towns start a league like that for kids to keep playing baseball?
they did.
And then kids who go on to really great baseball careers because they had a buffer. Maybe they weren't big enough or strong enough to move on and would have given up. So Mr. Dickhouse,
The nice thing about that league was that Jim's dad coached that league on Saturday mornings as if it was the American Legion baseball team.
well, and the good news was,
Every bit of energy to that league.
but he went to bed early every Friday night.
And I think Jack Krampus took that over, right? You did it for a couple of years. The Colt League?
No.
No? Okay. But it was really a good project. It was nice.
anybody else?
I just want to say something to Gail. I recognize the name Kristen Peterson. When I was directing the baseball league, we had tryouts. And she was coming up from Little League. First girl ever to try out. First girl ever. Well, I'm the guy that hits the fungos to the people, and she's the shortstop. I'm going to patronize her. Get a little rounded, little harder to the right, to the left. I couldn't get the damn ball by her. And finally, we had our draft. She was picked first in the draft. I mean, that's when it began to say to me, yes, girls do play sport and they are skilled.
Right. She was a shortstop. In my she was a shortstop for Westwoods. I remember. And batted fourth. And I was coaching one of the Boulevard teams. And they didn't lose a game for the 2 years she played.
Yeah.
She was the best player on the team. Yeah, she graduated in '84 with my younger sister, Chris. She graduated in '84 from Eastern. So I was coaching Jay my sophomore year, and she was taught how to pitch. She was so good. And so she was taught how to pitch. She went to Adelphi on full ride. And then she played on the Briquettes down in Stratford. Traveled all over the world. World champion. She made the United States team. She was phenomenal. Third base. She played in the.
She made me a believer.
Yeah, she ended up playing third base for the United States.
Wow.
She was that good. Yeah.
Well, we thank everybody for coming. It's a little different this year than last year. Still great stories, some great, obviously, memories here. Last year, there was a couple George Redmond stories that when we're at the gym, we hear all the time. And I still, just very quickly, the soccer story now is amazing, but everybody keeps remembering that. Tony Carrier told a story about Tommy Pons going in and wanting to take a whirlpool. Those who remember down at Bristol Central, the round there, and it was George would always be naked in that whirlpool. Anyway, Tommy Pons comes in and says, Coach, can I take a roll today? We got a big soccer game tonight. And Redmond's kid, hey, Fonzie, there are no big soccer games. Anyway, we'll kind of end on that. I appreciate everybody coming, and I think it's just great to just kind of remember a little bit about your past, and it's hard to believe at 80 years old that it's back, and it's that long ago that we did these things. And it's hard to believe that, as I started out saying tonight, when I call people and say, you know, can you come and talk? I mean, last year, they get people that were in the 60s last year, they're 60 now, age, right? I see Jimmy Morrissey at the gym or something like that, or Dennis Schimmelhorn, or those people that played the ages they are. What's the average age here now? I mean, you guys are 60s, huh? It's incredible. But think about how long ago that was and what an impression it made on everybody. And it just you made the fact that you came tonight and just added something to the history of Bristol. It's ironic that my grandson's picture happens to be on this book here, but they have no idea. They have no idea, no clue what it was or what it's like, because it's not the same. Joe, you coach now, but still not the same. It was, there's no question about that. You know? So we were fortunate. We were fortunate to be where we were and have the things that we did. You know, I appreciate you coming tonight to come in and share those things. Thanks very much.